So I think we've got a fantastic session coming up, and as we talk to the ambassadors, many sort of health and well-being issues are of real importance to you. And when we polled you about the issues that you cared about in and around that, a significant proportion of people said that they consider themselves or those close to them affected by the whole area of physical disability or sensory impairment. And it's a massive global health issue. I think we're going to pull up a chart behind me with the findings from the research and the results. But it's something that affects everybody, whether you're from a developed or a developing country. No country in the world has equal access to opportunities for people with disabilities. I think one of the really good things that happened in and around the Olympic movement was that 2012 Olympics in London actually really put a focus on the Paralympics. But what we need to ensure is it isn't 2016 before the world's sort of focusing on it and talking about it again.
Here's your stats, Davey. Thank you.
So here's you've got 35% of ambassadors say that their close friends or family have been affected by physical disability. 55% of One Young World ambassadors say there's not equal access to healthcare in their country. 57% of ambassadors say certain health conditions carry a stigma in their country. And finally, 47% of ambassadors say that the standard of equal access on public transport is poor or non-existent in their country. So the pledge that was drafted by the ambassadors is as follows. If we can pull the pledge up, please. Why do we allow the physically disabled to be socially disabled? And I think it promises to be an amazing session. And let's introduce the councillors who are going to be chairing this session. First up, it gives me great pleasure to reintroduce back to you Natalia Vodianova. We heard her story yesterday. Just a quick story about her before she comes up. I think one of the fantastic things she's done is obviously being who she is and as famous as she is in home country Russia, and they have the Olympic Games coming up, the Winter Olympics. Pretty much all of the Olympic sponsors wanted her to be the face for them and to get involved in their activities. And she said, yes, I'll do that, but I'll only do that if you put the same kind of effort and resource into the Paralympics that you're putting into the Olympic Games. So please welcome back Natalia Vodianova.
And now we welcome back again in his second year, and he chaired the BRICS session yesterday, a wonderful councillor, the CCTV news anchor, and also UN AIDS activist from China, James Chau.
Again, another councillor returning. We heard from yesterday the CEO of Brand South Africa, the place that we're going to next. His passion and energy in driving a positive image of South Africa have been amazing. He's doing an unbelievable job presenting his country to the world. Please welcome Matola.
And the founder of School for Startups. Since the last summit in Zurich, Doug has been appointed to lead an independent review into the future of apprenticeships by the UK government, and you couldn't ask for someone who's more concerned about entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, Doug Richard.
So before we actually hear from the speakers who are here, Kate's going to tell you about a delegate speaker who could not be here. Kate.
So this was a sad story because this was a visa that got refused, and we did everything we could, and the Pittsburgh Partnership did everything they could. But this is a young leader in Nepal whose name is Bishnu. And those of you who are returning ambassadors who were involved in the wake-up call last February in your country, I want to tell you just briefly and show you a film about what Bishnu did. Bishnu's passion was that in his city of Kathmandu, there is no access for disabled people to government or city buildings. So if you could imagine that you would have any kind of physical disability or not be able to walk, if you went to a government or city building to complain about something, or even to get a form that you needed or something you need to do, when you get to that building, you cannot get in there. There's no ramp, there's no means for you to get in. And this is Bishnu's passion, that he would have a wake-up call in Kathmandu and he would do something about it. I want to show you his film and then tell you his result. Take a look at this. Can we show Bishnu's film?
My name is Vishnu Tripathi. My team and I have been working really hard to improve wheelchair access at the public buildings in Nepal.
White? जस्तै हामी जिउसुडा अपाङ्गमती भवन नहुँदाखेरि कति गाह्रो भइरहेछ तपाईँहरूलाई
गाह्रो त भइरहेछ अब पढाइको सिलसिलामा हेर्नुपर्दा नि अब कलेजहरूमा नि त्यो मन्त्री त्यो अपाङ्ग मन्त्री नभएर कति दिदीबहिनीहरू दाइ दिदीहरू नि वञ्चित हुनुभएको छ पढाइबाट होइन स्कुलै छोड्न क्याम्पसै पढ्न नसक्ने अवस्था पनि छ
हजुर
कार्यक्रम चाहिँ धेरै नै गर्नुपर्ने देखिन्छ अहिले हाम्रो अपाङ्गता भएका व्यक्तिहरूलाई सडकमा उतारेर उनीहरूको चाहिँ हक अधिकारलाई सुनिश्चित गर्नको लागि किनभने अब अपाङ्ग समान अधिकार भनिन्छ र समान अधिकार चाहिँ पाइराखेको अवस्था छैन होइन त्यस कारणले पनि धेरै नै विभेदहरू अपाङ्गताको क्षेत्रमा आइरहेको छ.
Holding rallies in the center of our capital, Kathmandu, is one of the ways we are getting our point across, so that people with disabilities may begin to live normal, independent lives. It is time our government makes the necessary changes to allow disabled people to contribute to society absolutely and completely.
आफ्नो जनसङ्ख्याको यत्रो ठुलो हिस्साको समस्यालाई सम्बोधन गर्न सक्दैन. उनीहरूको लागि सम्मानपूर्वक जीवन बाँच्न पाउने अधिकार सुनिश्चित गर्न सक्दैन.
यति मात्र नभएर हामी जस्ता अपाङ्गता भएका युवा व्यक्तिहरू जो चाहिँ एउटा समृद्ध नेपालको लागि, समृद्ध विश्वको लागि र आफ्नो अधिकारका लागि.
Once this entire event is viewed abroad also, it definitely gives tremendous amount of messages to the youths all over the world. And it might trigger the interest in them to raise such type of awareness in other part of the world also.
I will not stop until my friends with disabilities can live equal, independent and free lives.
So what has happened now is, what happened at the end of the march is the government minister for health had to come out of the government building and down the steps because the march couldn't go into the building. So he actually had to come down the steps and receive the petition from the march that you saw there. And the result of it is that there are already ramps being built on some of the government buildings. And you see Bishnu there. I mean, and David and I were both talking about this last night and saying, Bishnu, you will be with us in Johannesburg. That's a young leader, changing the world, making a difference. He didn't ask for any support. He just got out there and look what happened there.
So if we could bring the delegate speakers up on stage, please. I think we're going to come from both sides, and then I will hand you over to the councillors to introduce the delegate speakers. So give a huge round of applause for the delegate speakers.
Hey Paris, how you doing? Hello darling. Go Josie girl.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's my turn. It's really nice to be back here today and to see you all. I hope you have a good morning here with us today. I'm on stage to introduce an incredibly powerful, beautiful young woman called Josie Badger. When I attended the Paralympic Games in London this year, it was a very impressive event, but also there was one quote that I caught, and I remembered that one of the Paralympians said. It sounded like this: focus not on what you miss, but on what you have. And this incredible woman done just this. She has used she has found her voice, and with that voice, she has used that voice to empower other young people like herself in Pennsylvania, her home. And she built a network of 2,000 young people and helped them to become better leaders, to find their voice. She encouraged them, she worked with them. She has, on the state level, she was founding member and president of the Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Network. And through her work, she was an author of 2 youth transition toolkits and has led over 200 trainings. And today, Josie is starting her dissertation on the ethical obligation for physicians to support transition of youth with disabilities into adult care, a very, very important subject. And also, last but not least, this year, beautiful Josie became Miss Wheelchair of United States. I think you will. I just met Josie backstage, and we had a little chat before we came here. And I was really, really impressed with this young woman, and I was really empowered myself. And so here she is for you.
Welcome, everyone, and it is so great to have you in my hometown. So real quick, before I came up here, last night I was trying to prep myself and like pump myself up. And so I was feeling pretty good about myself, and I looked down and I realized I had my shirt on backwards the whole day. So trying to move on from that. So I'm going to talk to you today about leadership and disability. According to the World Health Organization, 15% of the world has a disability. Being a member of the disability community, I realize that we face discrimination throughout the world. Our discrimination may not be in the form of animosity or hate crimes, but it's in the form of pity and ignorance and exclusion. Access has little to do with laws and everything to do with people. The different beliefs about the existence of disability interprets how people with disabilities actually are treated and are viewed as equal citizens. It is vital to make sure that people with disabilities are integrated into society and have the voice to speak at all levels in their societies. Due to misconceptions about disability, people with disabilities are often isolated. They often do not have a voice at the table and feel that there is something wrong with them. People may have disabilities, but the society makes the handicaps. As a young adult with a disability, I let society define me. I knew how society viewed disability, and I accepted it. I felt that I was broken and I needed fixed, and that the only way to contribute was to be able-bodied. And so I spent much of my younger life till I was 18 trying to be quote-unquote normal and to pretend like I didn't have a disability. Mark Twain once said, there are two most important days in a person's life. The first is the day you were born. The second is the day you find out why. This happened to me when I was 18. I attended a leadership conference for youth with disabilities. And it was the first time that I realized that I could be a leader as a person with a disability rather than in spite of it. I realized there were not enough opportunities for youth with disabilities to become leaders. So, in 2005, I developed the Pennsylvania Youth Leadership Network. This organization that now has 2,000 members and is growing supports the development of young adults with disabilities to reach their maximum unique and personal potential. It has developed toolkits, has presented throughout the country, and has ultimately affected policies and youth leadership across the country. Presently, I am developing the Children's Hospital Advisory Network for guidance and empowerment change. Changes meant to make sure that Children's Hospital promotes youth leadership development and make sure that young adults have a voice in their care. In 2005, I had no idea what I was letting myself into. But I had no idea how getting involved would change my life or the lives of thousands of other young adults. I was not in pursuit of accolades or recognition or to change the world. I wanted one other young adult to have a moment, that moment in life where you feel that you're meant to be there, that you're not broken, that their life isn't a mistake. And from that, I was able to make a difference in not just one young adult, but in thousands. This simple message was the foundation of these networks, empowering young adults throughout the country. It was about making them understand that even though they have a disability, they can make a difference. It doesn't take 1,200 youth or money or political affiliation to make a difference. It takes the self-conviction and passion of one. One person can change a policy. One person can empower an entire community, and one person can change the world. I believe that community that excludes one is not a community at all. I charge you today to be the one who advocates for people with disabilities and exclaim that there should be nothing about us without us. I believe that this is what One Young World is all about. It's about the one person who can power, the one person that can change the world. It's about taking the opportunity to change the world, one person at a time. As one of America's top disability leaders would say, lead on, one in the world, lead on.
It's an honor and privilege to meet every single one of you here at One Young World, as it is also to introduce every one of our delegate speakers, but especially so with my speaker, who I get to introduce today, Kerry Davies, who's 22 years old from near Birmingham in England. And at 22, most people have only been to university, perhaps done one or two other things. But Kerry is a student. She's completed her bachelor's in early childhood studies. She's on her way to getting her master's degree. But above and beyond all that, she's a lifelong volunteer. Now, since 13 years old, Kerry has been campaigning for the rights of people who live with disabilities. And also, as part of that, she's the founder of a movement called More Mascots, Please. I think it's very cute that she adds a please on there. She's here today with her supporter on your far left, sitting next to her, Helen, who's from O2 Telefonica. And they've been doing all kinds of partnerships with Think Big and with More Mascots, Please. And what Think Big does also is not just provide funding for people with disabilities, but also gives them the life skills and the development of those and the opportunities, of course, which are so critical to each and every one of us. Kerry's done many things, but most recently, Natalia just mentioned the Paralympics. Kerry was one of the torchbearers during the Olympic Games. And I asked her how it was, and she said, well, it wasn't too bad because I didn't have to get up too early. And it was also near my home. And she says so much, though, and during our brief time together backstage, she talks so much about how she's dedicated, which is a word that we hear very often at this conference, how she's very committed. But when she says it, and when you hear it very, very shortly, you see it also in her eyes, that she's so focused, so determined and so single-minded about what she wants to achieve, which is to be the voice, to be the representative, not just of people living with disabilities, but the most disadvantaged people in our communities everywhere. She's also extremely modest. She didn't tell me half her achievements, so Helen filled me in quickly. Kerry was one of the 10 people only who was awarded a gold medal by the Princess Diana Award in 2009. And she's also with the Arts Council and is also a very, very effective and influential youth network leader. So it gives all of us great pleasure to hear from you, Kerry, now.
How can I really follow on from that? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the health debate for One Young World. As I have said, hello, my name is Kerry Davies and I am 22 years old. As you've heard from James, I'm an individual who has completed a degree and is currently doing a part-time master's in youth and community work. I view myself as a community campaigner who advocates youth work nationally throughout my country, the United Kingdom. I am also disabled. My main conditions are cerebral palsy and spina bifida, although I do have more minor health-related conditions. As you've heard, my personal story has led me to become a disability rights campaigner with a positive focus on improving health outcomes and aiding recovery of children and young people when in hospital. My career path has enabled me to represent vulnerable individuals and those who feel they are marginalised within society. When thinking critically about disability, I would certainly urge you, the One Young World ambassadors, to think about both visible and invisible disabilities. A physical example of my own disability is my hands, as you can see, but an invisible example would be the pain that I endure each day. This is why we need to change attitudes so that environments are improved and healthcare staff are trained to care for individuals holistically. The power to support somebody's emotional needs is far too often forgotten about and underrated. From my personal experience and knowing of others in the same situation, we have found this firsthand to be true. 57% of the delegates asked said that certain health conditions carry a stigma attached to them in their country. Ambassadors also consider disability or illness to be the most significant barrier to a person seeking work in their country. We must address these issues because more than 500 million people in the world are recognised as having a disability, but still need to have equal opportunities. It is crucial that this is upheld and implemented, as disabled people have extra barriers to overcome in life, so they're not segregated and debased. I need all of you to stand united and not divided, as things must be changed. As global citizens, we need to put into place effective measures that prevent disability, as we should truly care about the community and see their ability of an individual rather than their inability. I believe that campaigning will positively change people's attitudes from both a social and cultural perspective. When raising awareness of disability rights issues, we need to empower and engage and educate to awaken the consciousness of populations. Attending this One Young World Summit is going to be far more effective than any equipment we could purchase to aid disabled citizens, as together we can make it our business to become more active and educated about the matter. We must understand that life is not a level playing field for all. Using a personal example, when I attend residentials with youth work teams, I require 24-hour care. However, the team make the necessary adaptations so that I can flourish, achieve and inspire others and interact within a level playing field. For future training that could be provided within all health settings all over the globe, it needs to be realised that disability is a complex phenomenon and reflects an interaction between features of a person's body and features of society in which the person lives. If this can be done, then disabled people will experience more fulfilment within their everyday lives, which is crucial, which will lead to their ultimate happiness and positive mental attitude. It will also give them the ability to advocate for others and make change in society, which is the reason we're all sitting here. My overall point throughout this speech is that disability can be made invisible if everyone sees the positive ability of each individual person. It is not the disability that handicaps individuals, but society that unfortunately disables them through lack of education and social ignorance. To make this possible, I am going to suggest to you 3 actions. Firstly, I urge you to go away from here and lobby your political representative about equal opportunities for disabled people. The World Health Organisation strongly advocates the inclusions of disabled persons in every area of social, economical, political and cultural life, and this should result in their true participation. It would be best to do this in memorable capacities and large numbers so that you will be seen as well as heard, and you might even influence their future political career. The second action that I would encourage you to do is network and blog on social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter. 35% of ambassadors asked have close friends or family members that have been affected by a physical disability, and this is why we should improve our health services by promoting it to as many people as possible. And thirdly, my final action is to plan a physical campaign locally to promote disability rights and inclusion. You could do this by creating a physical art form and something visual so people can see it and relate to it, such as drama, dancing and singing. this way of interaction is a very strong and powerful way of communication to get across this very important message. In conclusion, I ask if all of the One Young World ambassadors would stand by me in this pledge and make it a reality so that everyone feels empowered and involved in this movement. I hope I have inspired you to go away and achieve these outcomes so the rights and equality of disabled individuals are promoted.
Good morning, everyone. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce to you a young lady that's really involved in an area that for us on the continent of Africa is obviously something that's a central concern of our time. She is what I consider to be an activist in the area of HIV and AIDS. Benedicte, or Nina, as she prefers to be called, is someone that is playing a very active role on the continent in ensuring that she not only destigmatizes the issues of HIV and AIDS, but actively campaigns for women living with AIDS and ensuring that there is not only education but communication to remove the stigma around the disease. But she's also involved in many ways in other areas that focus on issues of health, HIV/AIDS being the main one. In talking to her, she told me that she's very passionate about making a difference in the area of HIV and AIDS because she believes that the disease has transformed her. And like most of us, she understands that the disease affects all of us. You either know someone who is infected or you know someone that is affected by the disease. So she works very closely with communities in her native homeland of Côte d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, based in Abidjan, although she tells me that she was born in Mbwake. Now, she's also involved with the Coalition for Access in terms of access to medication. She also works on the drafting committee for UNAIDS that focuses on that specific subject. And she is a student, and I asked her, where does she find the time to do all of this? And she says, you make the time. That just goes to show you how passionate she is about what she's doing. And lastly, a point that was of interest for me is that she studied social linguistics. And so I was trying to make the connection between linguistics and what she's doing, and I think she made a very clear explanation to me that social linguistics is about how language works in society. And therefore, to destigmatize HIV/AIDS means that you need to ensure communication and better understanding of the communication imperatives in any society. So now I could understand where the link comes from. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Benedicte Kouassi. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. I feel like a star. Since I've been introduced like a star, I want to pose. Please, read what is written on my read what is written on my T-shirt. Can you read it? On the back? Can you read it? Yeah. Thank you. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Today, there are 33 million of people living with HIV. 23.5 million of them live in sub-Saharan Africa, where I come from. In the last 30 years, great treatment progress has been made. New microbiocides help prevent HIV, and antiretroviral drugs help people live longer. So that today, in the US, in that country, if a 25-year-old young individual discovers he's HIV positive, if he goes to the hospital, the doctor prescribes treatment and is likely to live 50 additional years. 50 additional years. This is incredible, isn't it? Unfortunately, not all people living with HIV benefit from these advancements. Only 54% of people living with HIV in the world who are eligible for treatment are receiving it. You may ask why, and I'm wondering why. Why? This is only because most of people living with HIV come from countries with very limited resources. They come from countries which are poor, if I may say. So today, there are 9 million of people who are waiting for treatment. Guess what it means? 9 million of people are waiting for treatment in the world. And even if treatment is free in some countries, for instance, in my country, treatment is free. Other costs related, such as HIV testing, transportation to health facilities, prevent people living with HIV access treatment. And these costs are also a major barrier for young people living with HIV, because these young people, they struggle on themselves. They are trying to find someone to sustain their lives, so they cannot afford these costs. And patients simply cannot maintain treatment. And the other issue is the issue of drug stockouts. Drug stockouts. In some countries, there are drug stockouts. That means people cannot maintain treatment. And guess what it means for someone who is on treatment to interrupt his treatment for a lapse of time? Guess what it means? So I believe that these are challenges that need to be overcome to provide HIV patients access to optimal and better treatment. This is what my organization, the organization I'm working with, the International Treatment Preparedness Coalition in West Africa, tries to achieve. We advocate for optimal drug regimens, and we campaign against drug stockouts. Our youth programs use social media and blogs to educate young people with HIV about treatment literacy and adherence. One issue we also try to address is stigma. Yes, stigma. In many countries, people living with HIV face widespread stigma, and they face prejudice because they live in communities that still misunderstand HIV and blame those who have it. So patients, they had their illness, they skip their drug, they don't adhere to treatment just because they want to keep this hidden. They don't want people to know that they're HIV positive. As a result, they're more likely to infect people around them, and they're more likely to pass the virus. So we are trying to address the issue of stigma. And so far, with our organization, through anti-stigma campaign, we have empowered 50 positive women. And guess what these women have been doing? They've told their husband, look, I'm HIV positive. And this is very, very great because they have been, as they just told us, okay, you're HIV positive, it's not a problem for me. And they took their medication openly. Today they are free about the issue of HIV. They can tell everybody, I am HIV positive, and this is a great issue. We also empower people living with HIV by providing grants. Today, we have provided grants to 20 women living with HIV to develop income-generating activities so that they can afford their treatment costs. We have also founded 6 shelter housing for 50 young people with HIV. They are educated about treatment, adherence, safe sexuality, contraception, and reproduction. We'll also campaign for access to generic products, pediatric, less toxic drugs, which are more easily available elsewhere in the world, unfortunately not in sub-Saharan countries. You may ask why I'm focused on treatment, but this is because I'm committed to achieve universal access to treatment for people with HIV, because I believe that people with HIV need and they deserve quality, affordable treatment to live longer, healthier, and productive lives. And I think this issue can be achieved. We can achieve access to treatment if reliance on donor countries is reduced, if each government owns its national health response by increasing the budget to health, and if they support greater access to generic versions to drugs, which are cheaper, then the UN's goal to put 50 million of people eligible to treatment under treatment by 2015 can be achieved. So what I'm going to tell you is just to remind that since 30 years, we have lost 30 million of people because of AIDS. Guess, is it enough, or should the numbers continue to increase? This is what I want to think about. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Benedicte. And I get to introduce a second delegate speaker today. And when I first met her on paper, at least, the thing that stands out about her is how she spells her name. Her name is Emmah, but there's an H at the back of it, as you'll see very shortly. Emmah is a young woman who lives in Adelaide in southern Australia. And she has cystic fibrosis. So I was trying to understand. I said, what is it? And she said, well, it's a condition that affects many organs, but primarily the lungs and the pancreas. But to further understand, I said, how does it affect you? And she smiled and she said, how doesn't it? She talked a little bit about the inhale treatments that she has to take routinely morning and night. But way beyond that, she also described how it's so draining and exhausting for her every day. But of course, she's not here just to talk about how draining, exhausting it is. So we talked a bit about her dreams. And when she talks about her dreams, she does use some of the words that many of us use, but she takes it a step further. So for example, she says she wants to make not just a difference, but a global difference. And she also says that no matter what you face, what challenges you encounter through life, you can be what you want. And she adds also, and you can't stop being it also. Well, she's going to talk about her biggest dream. She didn't tell me what it is, but she says in her speech, so we'll have to listen out for that. And very quickly, she's in a managerial position at a call center for Westpac, which is a leading Australian bank. I think there's some of you here, aren't there? That's very soft. I think you could be a bit louder. And so it's not only a pleasure to introduce you, Emmah, but also to say happy birthday for 3 days ago.
Thanks very much, James. Well, I was very nervous, but now I'm standing up here, I don't feel as bad. So thank you for the introduction. So as James mentioned, my name is Emmah, my last name's Money, and I'm 25 years of age and suffer cystic fibrosis. In the last 10 years, I can't even count on both of my hands the number of childhood friends who have lost their battle to my illness, all under the age of 24. The average life expectancy for someone with my illness is 37 years of age, which means I would have 12 years left to live. That's just one of the harsh realities I have to face. What would you do if you were given such a life expectancy? How would you make your mark in the world? These are questions I constantly ask myself, and although my responses seem to change often, my determination and passion to make my goals happen is ever so strong. The most inspirational people in my life are my parents, who adopted me at only a few months old. My mum, the most amazing woman you would ever meet, and my dad, a paraplegic who doesn't let a wheelchair stop him achieving his goals. He represented Australia in the 1988 Paralympics in Seoul, just one of his many life achievements. My parents taught me, no matter how bad you think your life is, there is always someone else who is worse off than you. It doesn't mean at times I don't feel sorry for myself, but it gives me strength to know that it could be worse, and I strive to be better. 7 years ago, I became the National Youth Ambassador of Australia for cystic fibrosis. My role as ambassador has allowed me to participate in many fundraising events, profile raising opportunities, and most importantly, be a mentor to others. I share my story about living with CF and make people around Australia more aware of CF. It is an invisible disability. and to give advice, guidance and inspiration. I speak at charity events, encouraging others to get involved and make a difference, and I raise money in numerous ways, including raising $5,000 to jump 10,000 feet out of an aeroplane. In 2006, I released my autobiography, talking candidly about living with my illness, the challenges and much more. My book is proof that although I have a life-threatening illness, I can still be a high achiever and inspire other CF sufferers and their families to believe they can live a long, healthy, successful life. As a mentor, I support and encourage other people with CF to set goals and not let CF be a barrier to achievements. I encourage positive attitudes and the importance of being compliant and consistent with everyday treatment. If you look after your body, you can live a long and healthy life. I also travel across Australia speaking to students about my experience of being bullied in high school and living with a life-threatening illness in order to inspire young people to believe in themselves and never give up on their dreams. Lastly, I offer to support for parents who have young children with CF. I offered them advice and from my own experience to offer them peace of mind. Nevertheless, it is hard to be passionate all the time. I lost a close friend in 2010 just before his 21st birthday. I became very depressed and very ill. Cystic fibrosis had struck again in more than one way. After almost 8 months, I returned to work where I learnt there was an award for a nominated charity to receive a lump sum of money. I nominated my charity, Cystic Fibrosis. Applying for the award meant that discussing my involvement and it reminded me of all my achievements and that I am worthy and can do amazing things. I was fortunate enough to win the $10,000 award prize for the Westpac CEO Award for the community category. The money went towards research in finding a cure for CF. Another proud moment for me as ambassador, but at this time in the workplace, I was able to show that I can still make a difference. This opened my eyes and I made the decision I want to be a leader and help people realise that no matter what challenges life brings, if you are determined and passionate, anything is possible. I set myself a career plan for the next 6 months. I had to set myself realistic goals and a pathway on what to do to ensure I met my goals on time. I used my initiative to make things happen. I made people know who I am, what I'm about, and sought the knowledge and development needed to not only manage a business, but be an effective businesswoman. This is something I continue to learn each day. I am now in a leadership role, which I enjoy so much. It is the greatest satisfaction knowing you can encourage the best out of someone to be successful. A few things I have learnt so far in my journey. Don't wait for good things to come to you. You need to put yourself out there and grab each opportunity as it comes. Amazing things will happen, but you need to keep the ball rolling. Don't ever let anyone tell you something is impossible or you can't do it. There is no such thing. Dream like you have no limits and reach for the stars. I'd rather have a list of to-dos than a list of impossibles. I want to prove that I can be successful in spite of my illness. My vision is to find a cure for cystic fibrosis and to be alive when it's found. I want to be able to get up confidently and to thousands of people and say, I beat this illness, it did not beat me. You can all help. September 8th, 2013 is the first year ever Cystic Fibrosis is having an International Awareness Day. I encourage you all to follow me on Twitter or Facebook and get involved to help me raise awareness in your hometown. When you go home, take the time to get to know a few different people. Take a genuine interest in who they are and what they want to do. Treat everyone the same and give everyone the same opportunities. Diversity is what makes us unique, and it is what makes this world an interesting place. It is up to us to grasp the differences and do what we can to make this world a better place. Thank you.
Good morning. One of the things that One Young World does very well is to teach people to reach higher and to aspire to do more. It's my pleasure to introduce somebody this morning who I don't think needs that lesson. Paris Fatnani set out a few years ago, living in India, to reach out to see what he and his friends could do for villagers in the smallest and poorest villages in India. What they quickly realized is that the assumptions they brought to the table when they went out to those villages from their own urban homes was that they didn't really appreciate that there was a predicate condition, an issue that lay underneath the issues they sought to help resolve, and that was the fact that many of these people simply had no light. And so they set about trying to bring light to the unlit villages of India. A few short years later, they have now lit thousands of homes and tens of thousands of people's lives, thus permitting them to actually enjoy the basic things that are the preconditions to health, the preconditions to an education, and the preconditions to pulling themselves out of much greater poverty. Not content with merely lighting their homes, they created a series of solar kits, and they enlisted the help of people who, as they would rephrase it, are differently abled, to become the workers to build those kits. The average salary of a person in India is about $1,000 US. They've permitted these people to have salaries 40% above the average income, to be delivering products out to the poorest people in the world. And they do so by enlisting the helps of students who they felt needed a culture change and awareness. They wanted to bring to the better off people in India, the students in particular, the ability to understand that they need to give back. And so they created a cadre of volunteer students who develop and deliver the solar kits into the villages. So they not only are bringing light to the poorest and in creating a new workforce out of the disabled, but they're also helping create culture change by creating a cadre of volunteers among students. I don't think he needs much more introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, Paras Fatnani.
Thank you, Doug, for the very kind introduction. A very good morning to all the distinguished guests and members of the One Young World family present today. All right, I want you all to imagine something. Close your eyes. How does it look? Dark? Okay, now look at me. How did that feel? Different? Now imagine living your life like this. Difficult? Disturbing? There are thousands of people out there who live in this silence and darkness. But I believe if they've been deprived of one thing, God has made up to them with another gift. For me, the people who can't see, can't hear, can't walk, aren't disabled. They're differently abled. What you and I need to focus on is to use their uniqueness and create opportunities for them. The biggest problem such people face is that people consider them to just be different, be it a job interview, be it an admission test, or even getting coffee for themselves. We think they can't do it. Now that attitude is what you and I need to change. A couple of years back, a friend of mine employed someone with a disability. And to be honest, I was puzzled. Looking at the large pool of candidates, talented, brilliant candidates that they had, I thought, why would you employ someone with what I perceive to be a disadvantage? But today, I see my friend had a vision, and it paid off. That same individual they employed years ago is now leading a large vertical in their growing business. Now that is the sort of approach I hope to achieve and motivate others to pursue. I've been trying to do my bit with the project I'm involved with, which has truly inspired me. Project Chirag. Chirag in Hindi means light. It's an initiative started by the students of HR College to literally and figuratively light up the lives of individuals in rural India and over a period of time globally as well. The project provides solar lighting solutions to rural households having no access to electricity, making their lives easier and better. Now, this is not a one-of-a-kind project. There are others who've taken up a similar initiative. But what makes us different, what makes us stand out, is the people-to-people approach. It's not just the people who we reach out to, but the people we reach out to them through. So we've involved students all over in different aspects of the project, from visiting villages to fundraising, and actually the students have taken it a step further, where they go to these households, they install the devices, and teach them how to use them. But I feel it's important that we don't really keep the differently abled on the receiving end of the service, but also involve them as a part of the change. Now in India, what the people who we're referring to as the differently able, 63% of them are unemployed and contribute to as much as 6% of the nationwide unemployment. We've trained 6 differently abled individuals in remote areas of India by linking them with technical consultants, transferring skill sets for assembly, inventory management, quality control, and maintenance of solar products. We've also partnered with the Fellowship of the Physically Handicapped, an NGO in Mumbai, for quality testing and packaging of the product, making another 10 individuals from this community an integral part of our value chain. And the most interesting update is that because of their work, we're now seeing commercial orders flow in, leading towards a social business model, which we've been talking about for the last 2 days. Each of them now earns, like Doug said, a sustainable annual income of $1,440 an annum, which is 40% higher than an average salary in India. Can we all help them make this money? Yeah? This is where you come in. Now, most of you are already involved in different projects. What I ask of you is to offer training and encourage participation from the differently abled community in your projects. Every field, education, health, environment, has different requirements. Find out what they're best suited for and what they enjoy the most, and then create these opportunities. Of course, there are problems. You need patience, often assistance from experts, and sometimes even the courage to invest in people when things look bleak. We did that. And today, standing in front of you, I'm proud to say that with the help of the differently abled community, as of August 2012, we've provided solar lighting solutions to 3,781 households across 100 villages in India, impacting over 20,000 individuals in just over 2 years. And this is just the beginning. We aim to reach over 10,000 households by the end of 2014 and impacting over 50,000 individuals by creating 25 Project Chirag chapters. These would include local mostly, but also some international chapters, like the one we're trying to start up in Kenya with a fellow One Young World ambassador there. But most importantly, we envision to create 25 sustainable jobs. In the bigger picture, this number might seem small, but the idea here is to create sustainable jobs, and even more so, sustainable relationships. If each one of us, 1,200 present today, go back and involve one differently abled individual in your project and include one student in the process, imagine what a difference we can make. With that thought in motion, I'd ask everyone present here to do all you can to support this community. The goal here is that we know they need us, and we know we can help. So let's do this. Thank you.
I think I'm always impressed with the quality of the delegate speakers, but that was the most amazing session. You know what? You give them a huge round of applause. Now, you know the drill now. Our councillors are going to man the microphones. We'll have an open mic session for about 35 minutes. After that, I think the councillors will also give you their perspective and sum up in a few words. So if you guys would like to take the mics, just a quick thanks to James, who has to head off back on a flight. So thank you very much, James, for everything you've done. So if each one of you can, and a special guest who you'll be hearing from, or two special guests who you'll be hearing from in a second, Mark Kielberger, I think you all know about We Day. Mark has stepped in with Spencer to man a microphone. So thank you, Mark and Spencer, and they'll be doing the session after this, which is going to be equally inspiring.
Seven only on each mic. Seven only.
Yes, so now, all of you were trying to show off yesterday to Jack Dorsey. So when we had the Q&A session with him around, you kept your comments and questions on the whole to the length of a tweet. Now that he's not here, let's still keep to that discipline. That, you know, the shorter that you keep your sentence, the more of you can get involved. And what we're going to do is take 7 people on each mic. And then after that, we won't be able to add any more. So if we can have 7 people on each mic.
7 only. The 8th one, sit down. Okay?
We're missing some. She's coming. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we have Rachel from United States speaking.
Hello, everyone. I'll keep this brief because I popped up yesterday. I just wanted to say that I think mental wellness is a universal issue. It's not, thank you, it's not about mental illness, it's about mental wellness, and it affects all of us. I have bipolar disorder, and that's not usually how I introduce myself, but in this world, when someone is diagnosed with a psychiatric disability, it becomes who they are. Instead of saying, you know, Rachel has cancer, it becomes Rachel is bipolar. And that kind of disability becomes my main definition, and that can be so defeating. So I think what we need to do is to have a dialogue about what disability, what mental wellness really means in our communities, because only then can we grow, can we transcend these labels, these diagnoses, these DSM definitions that just constrain us and limit us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Miller.
Yes, we have Zoe here from the United States. Zoe.
Good morning, fellow delegates. When our returning ambassador was speaking about the issue of HIV/AIDS and how a large part of it has to do with the lack of resources and health infrastructure within countries that are disproportionately affected, we also do have to note that there are international policies that restrict access to these nations that are in the World Trade Organization, and so that's also something that we need to address, these international laws that are preventing developing nations from being able to develop their own antiretroviral drugs. So that's something we need to note.
Thank you, Ceri.
Doug.
I'd like to introduce Rati from Indonesia.
Okay, hello everyone. I just like to share about condition in Indonesia. Health takes a part for our world life. Without health, of course, the people cannot live her life. I come from Indonesia. In Indonesia, in 2005, we are affected by avian influenza, and the transformation source can be derived from animals infected poultries. And during that time, based on the WHO in 2012, there were 8 cases of bird flu in Indonesia, which indeed, according to WHO, is the highest number in the world that in Bangladesh, Colombia, Vietnam, China, and Egypt. Since 2005, cases of avian influenza in Indonesia has been 159 deaths, and out of 191 cases of avian influenza. Because of that, our governments make a vaccine to solve the problem, and I think the best technology can solve the problem from the avian influenza in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Mark, welcome, and to your microphone.
Good morning, David. We have Paolo from the UK with us today.
Thanks a lot for that. I just wanted to echo the first person who spoke about bipolar disorder. Great. I completely agree with you, because when I first saw this session, it focused on physical disabilities, and I really do think that for the next One Young World in Johannesburg, we need to focus on hidden disabilities, so mental health, but also people who have Asperger's syndrome and autism, because like myself, when I was 19, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome as well. So I know how it feels like to have a hidden disability. So if we can have that focus a little bit more in Johannesburg around, I'm not saying that physical disabilities are not as important, but I think hidden disabilities are just as important, as the person from Australia mentioned as well. And if anybody here is affected by Asperger's syndrome or has a family member or a friend who has it and wants any advice from me, I'm here, and anybody just need that advice.
Thanks, Paolo.
Thanks.
Natalia.
First of all, this is great already that we addressing these issues, we're speaking about it at this forum. We had to start somewhere. Thank you so much for reacting in this positive way, and this is early morning session, and I'm really, really excited. I actually feel much more comfortable down here, just to say that. And Sergio from Mexico.
Good morning, everyone. These stories we just heard were really inspiring, and I think we really need to focus on losing those stigmas we have with disabled people, but we also need to focus on prevention. You know, there are a lot of diseases that can be prevented and that causes lots of disabilities, and we can prevent. Just to give you an example, here in the United States and most of developed countries, the cerebrovascular diseases are the #1 cause of disabilities, and that is a completely preventable disease, okay? So we need to focus on this. And I would like to make an emphasis on what Nina just said about access to drugs. I really believe that one of the biggest challenges in health is like to improve the access and to assure that access to most of the population, because just to give you like some facts, like millions of people around the globe live without these health services, and 10 million people every year are pushed into poverty just because they don't have the money to pay for health services, and they need to pay themselves. I mean, they don't have this insurance. So this access is what we need to focus, okay? Thank you so much.
Miller.
Thank you, David. I have Cecile here from France. She'd like to talk to us about a program that ties education and disability access.
Hi, hello everyone. Yeah, I want to focus on the subject of the integration of disabled people in education, because I know about a very innovative program which was created in my university and that may interest people that are still studying. So that's a program that is called PHARES, P-H-A-R-E-S, that's a French word. And this program is for the student in universities to be tutor for a young disabled, like middle school student which have disabilities, or high school student that are brilliant and that have a really good potential to go to the universities after high school. But because of the current system, the teachers may deny them access to universities after high school, and they will say, no, you have a disability, you're going to be tired, you're not as productive as the other student, or stuff like that. So that's a special program that gives tutor to these young students with disability.
It's turning into a blog post. It's not a tweet anymore.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Doug.
I'd like to introduce Ray from Ireland.
Hi, sorry, it's Marie.
Or somebody like that.
Hi, I just want to reiterate what's been said already. I come from an organisation in Ireland which is the National Centre for Youth Mental Health, and unfortunately suicide is the biggest killer of young men in Ireland who are aged under 25, and we only spend something like 1% of the health budget on mental health. And I think we need to, I'd like to ask everyone just to help reduce the stigma of mental health by just asking someone how they feel, speaking to them about their day. And I think we want to focus on the holistic point of view of mental health and stop focusing on prescribing medication, because unfortunately in Ireland we focus a lot on prescribing drugs when really we just want to provide people with someone to speak to. Thank you.
Mark.
We have Christy, you came all the way from Pittsburgh.
Thank you for the introduction. I have a challenge for everyone here. We're talking about increasing access for those with disabilities, and I think we need to go beyond just increasing access. It's not enough to say we're going to increase access by putting a ramp to a back door. We should be increasing access by putting that ramp to the front door. They should be coming in to the same place that anyone who can walk or has maybe an invisible disability as well. Everyone should have the same access. It's not enough to allow stigma to put someone going to the back door. Thank you.
Natalia.
Yes, Sergio, just back for 1 second.
I just wanted to mention that we're having an idol session in health that today at 10 p.m. in the Doubletree Hilton. Everyone who wants to attend will be there at the lobby, okay?
So that's 10 p.m.?
10 p.m.
And what's the session on?
Night
Health.
owl. It's a night owl
owl,
session.
okay.
Yeah. I'm just...
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Vanessa from Australia.
Firstly, Kerry and Josie, I just wanted to say that it was really fantastic to hear your stories.
Within Australia, I'm part of a program called Young Social Pioneers. So we're a network of 18 entrepreneurs that are working on a variety of social projects. And earlier this year, I met a really inspiring young man who's 25 years old and also restricted to a wheelchair, but he's leading some really inspiring initiatives, and his vision seems to be very similar to yours. So I'd like to be able to connect all of you so that you can share your stories and collaborate. On another note, Kate and David, I think it's really fantastic that we had a session yesterday that centred around obesity and obesity-related diseases. And when Jamie asked how much everybody cared about this issue, absolutely everybody stood up. But I think it's, interesting to see that within the last few years we haven't heard one delegate speech which has actually focused on that issue specifically. So within the next upcoming summits, I think it will be really fantastic to see some speeches and to actually hear about some initiatives that have come out in that area. And I think Jamie challenges to do that.
Good input,
Thanks.
thank you. Miller.
Yeah, David, we have Rizka from Malaysia.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, my apologies. Yeah?
Yes, it's Indonesia. I'm Rizka from Indonesia. Good morning, everybody. I want to ask a question. So, Indonesia, there is so many HIV/AIDS causes, and the main problem in Indonesia is the HIV/AIDS causes is like an iceberg phenomenon, because people often judge that someone with HIV is a bad people because he or she uses drugs, have multiple sexual partners, etc. So, however, it makes the early detection system in Indonesia facing the difficulties because people feel ashamed to check him or herself. So, what do you think about that? And can you give me any opinion to solve that problem? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doug.
I'd like to introduce Lorato from Botswana.
Thank you very much. I'm from Botswana, which is in southern Africa, and one of the worst hit regions in the world by HIV and AIDS. Like Nina said, it's either you're infected or affected, and I'd like to believe that my brothers and sisters from southern Africa agree with that. However, I'd like to take a quick shift from the government. Our government is doing all it can to help combat HIV and AIDS. There's free ARVs, free condoms, sex education integrated into a syllabus in schools. However, each year there are reinfections and new infections, suggesting that it has got something to do with behavioral change. So perhaps policies that could look at the behavioral change aspect of the people. It begins with me, knowing that I have to use the condoms, I have to access the free ARVs that are there, instead of heavily relying on the government, which is doing all it can. So it's all about behavioral change. Sugar daddy syndromes, you all know it if you're from Southern Africa. Thank you.
Good girl.
Mark.
I have a fellow Canadian, this is Kelly.
Hi. I just wanted to touch on an issue that several have already mentioned about mental health. It is an increasingly important issue, especially in North America, that I think needs to have attention and be addressed. In particular, the stigmas that are associated with mental health. A lot of people with mental health issues, they lose their rights, and not even just like from a government standpoint or anything like that, but from a society standpoint. People do not take what they say seriously, they lose their voice. And I think that's one thing that should never happen. Everyone has a right to their voice, regardless of their condition, their mental health, anything like that, because regardless of their illness, they still are themselves, and what they say is not their illness talking, it's them. And I think a lot more has to be focused on advocating for these people. Thank you.
Natalia.
We have Edna from Mexico.
Growing up with a brother with Down syndrome is probably the best thing that could ever happen to me. But I found out a lot of people were just afraid to hang out with him or be with him. It's mostly ignorance, but I encourage you to don't be afraid of someone who's different, someone who's capable, different. Just they can do so many things. We can learn so much from them. And now there's shots that you can have when you're pregnant to avoid having someone with Down syndrome or with other disabilities. And I feel that's taking their rights to be someone, to be a person. So I feel we can make something about that, because 9 out of 10 people who are pregnant with someone with Down syndrome are aborting the child. So I feel we can do something about that.
Miller.
Okay, we have Angela from Taiwan.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for all the really great presentations today. And I just want to echo on previous points on prevention. This can be different between developing countries and developed countries. And some of the prevention ways we've heard about includes behavioral prevention, such as sex ed, and then education on overeating or exercise, etc. And then there's also the aspect of innovation and innovation in technology. For instance, vaccinations that we also heard about. So I just want to just emphasize on putting some of our heads together on coming up with innovative technologies. So one of the startups that I've read about is this startup called Diagnostics for All, and they basically use paper and the law of osmosis to do infectious diseases detections in Africa. And so I think ways like that, that's very inexpensive, can also really advance our health. Thank you.
Doug.
I'd like to introduce Marvin from New York.
I just wanted to say thank you to the delegate speakers. You were all phenomenal, exceptionally phenomenal. I think it's fantastic that you stand in and inspire people to do things, especially people that don't generally feel like they can, because there's not that many people that look or are like them doing things. So I just wanted to say thank you and keep doing great work.
This is Insia from Pakistan.
Hi, this is a really inspiring session. I just wanted to talk about this group back home in Pakistan. It's called Show You Care. It was created by this colleague of mine who's been wheelchair bound since childhood, and she just wanted to create awareness about the need for wheelchair friendly restaurants and cafes and public places. And she's managed to collect a lot of young, passionate people with her who are together. They have been able to raise a lot of noise and get noticed by government officials and restaurant owners and different public places to create ramps and wheelchair-friendly washrooms and other facilities. I just really had goosebumps after this session, and I just pledged that when I go back from One Young World, I will just join this group and do everything that I can to support their cause. So I just want to thank One Young World and the two of you for inspiring me and for touching my heart. Thank you.
That's what it's about. Go home and do it. Fantastic.
Natalia.
First of all, can I just quickly say, since I feel so comfortable here, that it's so incredible to see how many of you are so engaged, involved, and actually eloquent and aware of what's going on out there. And I think it's really encouraging for our speakers, for us, the councillors, and I'm sure for the organizers. So thank you again. And here's Julia from Ukraine, neighbor.
Hello, dear friends. Hello, everybody. One Young World. I would like to use this opportunity and to express my huge respect, my huge encouragement, the huge inspiration that I receive that is brought up by disabled people of Ukraine, because really our country does nothing for disabled people. They can't go to any social places as we can. They can't use public transport as we can. But these people in the Olympic Games of 2012 in London, Ukrainian team took their 4th place after China, Russia, and UK. And I want to use this opportunity to applaud these people and to say how much I'm inspired by their will, their strength, their power, and we really need to learn from these people.
Thank you. Mela.
Thank you, David. We have Yachun from China.
First, I want to have a big thank you for this fantastic section and all the inspiring messages the speaker gave to us. and also their passions. When we're talking about health, and there is one thing we should emphasize is that the quality of the health care and also the appropriateness of the treatment. And I think we all, once or sometime, hopefully not, we are the patient. And then we should have the right to monitor how they treat us and what is the qualities. Right now I work in radiology, and one big thing is the imaging in the radiology. So how the radiation exposure, how the contrast media used, we should know, and we avoid the overexposure and the overuse. So I propose every dose matters. Okay. Thank you.
Doug.
I'd like to introduce Nilu from Sri Lanka.
Thank you. And this is I must say, and I admit, for most of you, I may be surprised. This is my first time I'm talking in public.
Hey.
So, because I stammer, so I prefer not to talk in public. So, yes. And I must thank Miss Kate for bringing me here, because this is the very first time in my life I use pen just to talk to people. I write in papers and to media just to say that I have a voice, but I never talk. So after hearing from the Australian candidate, I thought I must go and talk. So, thank you, Miss Kate.
Wonderful. Mark.
You have Ibrahim from the Comoros Islands.
Thank you. I'd like to raise a small comment and set a challenge for us as young leaders about HIV and AIDS. Benedicte was talking about people who can't access treatment, and she talked about numbers. 30 million people died because of HIV/AIDS. And when we hear that, we used to see it from a statistical perspective. And it's more than stats and numbers. It's about human beings. And while people are seeking for treatment, those who will be in need are still increasing because of new infections due to lack of education and the access to the right information. And I think as a young leader, we can make a real change on it. Let me just take an example. We use social media to break down strong political dictators. Why not can we use them to make an HIV/AIDS prevention revolution? And I think we have the power to do it via what we call peer education, or I don't know, but I think we as young people, we don't need funds. We need funds to afford those treatments, but we don't need funds to do peer education or to use Twitter or Facebook to make an HIV/AIDS prevention revolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalia.
We have Alex from US.
So I was very moved by your discussion just earlier, and I want to make a comment. I'm a pharmacist. I'm in the pharmaceutical industry, and I want to talk about something that I think goes a little bit unmentioned. It's the mistrust of doctors and healthcare providers from the I guess, arena of Western medicine or from the pharmaceutical standpoint. I think some of the critique that the Western medicine and pharmaceutical industry and clinicians and the way they're trained in the Western sort of sense is appropriate, but I think sometimes it's magnified a little bit too much, and in developing countries and also in developed countries, it results in patients being completely uneducated about their disease and not having appropriate access and appropriate information about the correct treatment of their conditions. And I know we're all very highly educated and intelligent. I'm extremely impressed by everyone here. But I do think that all of us, especially from developing countries, do need to take back the message that know as much about your condition as possible and don't just resort to some things like homeopathic treatments and sort of cultural treatments, which in some cases work, but in a lot of cases do damage to the actual disease and the actual patients. Yeah.
Miller.
Thank you, David. We have up next, Corey from Guyana.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to highlight, global health issues are concerns for everyone, but I think there's also a need to a bit focus on young boys and men access to health services. I'm from a very small region, the Caribbean, and lots of times the health services are very, a lot towards women, and the services are more focused for women. And so men want to be masculine. They don't feel that they should go to hospitals and clinics, and we're really suffering. So I hope that, as leaders, we can also put a little focus on young men access to lots of the health services. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug.
I'd like to introduce Yoni from Uganda.
Hello, everybody. Mine is a caution. I want us to look at each individual the way you are, and then imagine yourself with another person with a disability. For example, I like the way the delegate from India was talking about his attitude the first time he saw his friend employing someone with a disability, and he was like, this guy is going to lose, and then it paid off. So what I want us to do is to visualize your attitude towards someone with a disability and see how different you can attend to such different needs. And I think there we can make an impact to different people, because each one of us has a disability or something that he can't do one way or another. Yeah.
Thank you. Well done. Mark.
We have you from Japan.
Hello, I'm Yuhei Suzuki from Japan, but now I'm studying public health in New York. Thank you very much for all speakers. And this time I just want to ask or tell my personal feelings. My question is, why did you make such quick all of your standing ovation after the speech of Josie Baker from USA, while you didn't do that yesterday's session? What made you to make a standing ovation so quickly? Is it because of her great performance, or is it because of her appearance or disability? I'm sorry, I'm wondering, I worry to be unpolite, but to be honest, it was difficult for me to hear about what you were speaking, so I couldn't make a standing ovation in that time after your speech. So I know that I'm full with the idea of human dignity or equality or diversity. So every people, regardless of disability or not, every people should be equal, or every people must have dignity. But I do have feeling of difficulty. How do I talk with or communicate with people whom I feel different? So, yeah, I'm sorry again, but so I want to ask you again, or I would like you think again. Is it so easy to say equality or universal access or this stigmatization? How can we make such equality, or how can I get over the feelings of difference?
I think your point is probably is that we all feel a little different. We all actually more similar than different, right? Is that what you mean? And the reason why we are so moved by someone like Josie, because to me, people who have sort of more obstacles to overcome and overcome them and succeed and inspire us at the same time, yes, I think it's impressive. Don't you guys agree?
Thank you, Natalia. Now we have one, Kate, now there's one more question from each, because he's seventh. So there is actually one more question from each microphone. So the person who sat down at Doug's microphone, you can get back up. One more question from each microphone. Natalia.
Lucas from Brazil.
Hi, good morning. So I don't know if you know, but in Brazil, the HIV treatment is for free for everyone. And we are not a first country, how you used to say. Cancer treatment is one of the best in the world. So I was just thinking here, you Americans live in a country where 45,000 people die every year because they don't have healthcare treatment. So you should think about it. You are the richest country in the world, and you are not providing health care for people. In other countries, you should think about it when you are voting. Like, we should give treatment free for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Miller.
Thank you. I have here Naisha from St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Hi everyone, I am from a small island, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's in the Caribbean. Well, for us, disability with the facilities, this is put at a less important for our people. So I want to call on all of us here, just as security has been put at utmost important recently because of all the crime and violence, I want to call on us to make sure that when we go back to our homes that we're making an international call for our governments to put the issue of disability facilities at high importance, because just as they would be at a disadvantage with security because of the fact that they might not be able to walk properly, they might not be able to use the infrastructure because of their devices that they have to use. This is really important for them to, because in case of an emergency, how do they get to the exit as fast as someone who is not disabled? So let's make it international for everyone.
Totally agree. We're just going to quickly go back to Natalia's microphone because we have somebody very interesting to introduce.
Yes, Insan Kaidan from Syria wants something important to say.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to be benefit from this opportunity to, and since there are media here and delegates from all over the world, I want to just to raise awareness and remind you that in the moment that I'm speaking, that there are 200,000 refugees, Syrian refugees, in the neighbors countries of Syria. They are really suffering from difficult situation, and disease because it's coming cold and it's coming winter now. So I'd like to ask you all to support them in your country by media, by raising awareness in your communities and talking to your governments.
Thank you.
About them. Thank you very much.
So let's not forget Syria, and Kofi Annan will obviously be here tomorrow, and I'm sure you will have some questions for him on that. Doug.
I'd like to introduce Valeria from Mexico.
Hi everyone, I would just like to comment on something. My mom is a US citizen, and a year ago she was diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, which is a blood disorder. And due to the fact that unfortunately in the United States, which is a very, very developed country as we all know, she didn't have access to an insurance, a healthcare insurance, and it's not really an obligation for people that give you a job in the States to give you a health insurance. She had to receive treatment in Mexico City, so that's why she has been there for over a year. So I just want to ask and want to urge really on the US government to help people with these type of conditions and that don't have access to health care insurance. There is, of course, Medicaid and Medicare, but it's not a system that really helps as in Mexico, where through your taxes you pay like $30 for every month, and we can almost say that for free you can receive a lot of help in your health conditions. So I want to urge the US government on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, last question, Mark will
David,
comment.
finally we have Megan from the UK.
Hi. I have a physical disability, and I also have a mental illness. that I don't tell people about. And I've just realised I've been inspired really by everyone that I've heard today, that really I shouldn't be hiding anything about my conditions. And that really even some of my closest work colleagues don't really know, even the full... I tell people about my physical disability for practical reasons, rather than actually wanting to educate people about what's wrong with me and what they can do to help and stuff. I've got a question for Kerry, who I spoke to the other day on the boat, and she's really inspired me too. I work for Arup, which is an engineering company, and I feel that we don't really have many people working in our company with disabilities, or maybe not obvious ones. And I'd like to ask her how we go about starting to change that within our company.
So just before Kerry answers, if the councillor would like to come back on stage, we'll ask you to comment in a second. Kerry, would you like to answer that?
Yes, I'd use the model that O2 and Telefonica use, because I'm actually one of their new members of young staff. I'm a regional coordinator in my area where I live in the West Midlands, and I'd say that it's full support and inclusion that you need, and like I said in my speech, the understanding that you need to make equality of opportunity. So life is not a level playing field, and it never will be. But O2 and Telefonica see my ability and not my inability, and that's due to them being educated and hiring the right staff to employ and support young people, and their lack of they've got, social ignorance just doesn't exist within O2 and Telefonica, and I always receive every bit of support I need, and that's why my mascots go across the country into their retail stores to fundraise for disabled children and those with terminal illnesses. So that would be my advice.
Fantastic, well done. And then Josie, you just wanted to comment?
Sure. I'm gonna go here. Oh yeah. So I just wanted to try to respond to earlier. And I'm gonna say honestly, every single speaker and delegate deserves a standing ovation. You guys are all awesome. And I appreciate it. I mean, that made my day, and we can, I'll go right home, write in my Christmas letter. But I am so appreciative. But I think that, and I'm going to kind of address what was said, is yes, I do what I do. I made a nonprofit organization. I work full time. I'm getting my doctorate, but I am just a person. I'm no better than anyone else. However, every day is a battle for me. And for anyone with a disability, invisible or visible, we have to deal with bureaucracy. We have to fight the fight that we are well enough to live on our own, but need help. And so I rely on others to support me, and without them, I couldn't be where I am. And I thank those individuals who stand up for our rights and what we believe in. And so, no matter who we are, we have barriers. And we all have that connection of those times when we are exhausted, when we feel like we can't give anymore. But that is the time to go forward, and I appreciate all of you who are here fighting for equality for people with and without disabilities. Thank you.
Okay, so councillors, would you like to make a comment, answer a question, offer a perspective? Natalia. You can go back down to the microphone and do it if you feel more comfortable.
I guess I just wanted to share my personal knowledge Since I'm an ambassador for Olympic and Paralympic Games in Sochi, I have encountered few Paralympic players that always, they're just incredible people. They inspire me, they impress me in many ways. And what I wanted to share with you is that the one question I asked all these people, and I also asked Josie this morning, is who are the people around you that make you who you are, make you the success story that you are? And normally it's the parents or the trainer or husband or child, but it's normally friends, but it's normally people like us. It's normally people who are not disabled and who are completely sort of physically normal, let's say. And I just wanted to share that. I think this is really important to know that it's sort of up to all of us, and it is all around us, and in fact, as we realize and learn today. And also to say that I think that what is clear today is that, and what has actually happened to be my motto in life, is we should see the goals and don't see the obstacles. Yeah. So I share that with my motto with you.
Thank you. Mela.
Thank you. If there's one thing that comes out of this session, it's the fact that whatever interventions or change that needs to happen actually comes from within all of us. This is an area that is not so much an area that begins with policy changes and maybe planners, but when you listen to all the stories of everyone that says there, it's about us. It starts with all of us, and it starts with behavioral changes, attitudinal changes that need to take place if we are to shift the bar in terms of issues such as access, if we are to shift the bar in terms of how do we destigmatize whether it's disability or even other areas of health such as HIV/AIDS. So if you listen to everything that's been said, we actually need to look at this as an area that we can most impact upon, because it starts with all of us. And I think that's really what we need to take out of this. I think it's Josie who said it doesn't take political affiliation to make a difference. It takes one person to make a difference. And I think this is something that I believe it starts with all of us, and other things will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Miller. Doug.
The inspiring stories this morning simply remind me of something that perhaps we lose sight of, and that is that health and wellness are not light bulbs. You aren't well or unwell, healthy or unhealthy. The fact of the matter is, it's a continuum across all of us. There's no one in this room who is perfect, and there's no one in this room who's completely disabled. Some of us are blessed with gifts of beauty, intelligence, and advantage, and other people are challenged by obstacles or disabilities. We start from different places, and we all take steps one at a time. The only thing that life has taught me is that you start, you keep walking, you never stop, and you never give up. And you guys have reminded me of that once again, and for that, I thank you very much.
Thank you. You can put it back up. Okay, so it's now time to vote. And again, we'll pull up the pledge on the back, but don't forget, you're not just voting for the pledge. It's about what you do with it. If you believe in this pledge, Josie said it takes one person. If you believe in this pledge and are behind this pledge, go and do one thing. Do one thing that you wouldn't have done that this session changed your mind about. So,
and can I just say, just before you go to the vote, on a note, we all understand what the delegate from Japan was trying to say at the microphone. And I would say this to you on a personal note. I also think it's creepy to give loads of standing ovations every 2 minutes to every single speaker, everything. I do think that. I will not personally, and David as well, stand and applaud you because you got up to say something because you're a white person, or a black person, or a yellow person, or because you stood up and said something because you're a beautiful person, or someone not as physically beautiful. I'm not going to stand and applaud you because you're disabled and you said something. But when you stand up and say one person changes the world, when you show that kind of courage, that sort of lack of self-pity, I will stand on a rooftop and applaud you for the rest of my life.
So, if we look at the pledge, we, the One Young World ambassadors, pledge to improve facilities in our environment so that those with disabilities have access to equal opportunities. I think you know the drill. We have the countdown clock. We will sound the little sound. I agree, I disagree, I abstain. Can we count down, please? So to the 81% of you who are supporting this, go do one thing. If you're in a position to employ somebody, focus on employing somebody with special needs. If you're in a position to look at a building that you're working in, or a university or a school and it doesn't have access, start a campaign to get a ramp in. But let's make sure it's not just about supporting the pledge, it's about what you actually go away and tangibly do because of that pledge.